Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world that's equal parts cozy, smoky, and slightly smelly, the great hall of a medieval castle. On a night when the snow outside falls so thick it silences the world. You're standing right at the edge of that moment. Boots wet from the slush, cheeks flushed from the cold, and the air before you is thick with the scent of roasted meat, bread, and wood smoke. You can hear the laughter of lords and ladies bouncing off the stone walls, the crackle of the hearth, and somewhere, a lute strums the same three chords over and over because honestly, who needs variety when you're slightly tipsy on mead? And yes, you're about to eat what medieval nobles considered fine dining. Spoiler: you probably wouldn't survive it, either from the salt, the grease, or the complete lack of basic hygiene. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where and when you're watching from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Great Hall glows like an ember in the heart of a snow-locked world. The walls rise high, heavy with tapestries that trap both heat and history. Every breath you take smells of smoke and rosemary. And underfoot, the rushes, those dry straw-like reeds scattered to soak up spills, crunch softly. You step closer to the long wooden table, a slab of oak so massive it could survive an earthquake, and you find your seat among the blur of velvet sleeves and clinking goblets. The plates? Not really plates at all. Just thick slices of stale bread, trenchers. They're called. You place your stew on top, and as it soaks up the fat and gravy, it becomes both dish and dinner. Practical, yes. Sanitary? Not so much. You take a bite and instantly taste the age of the bread, a faint sourness like the ghost of forgotten grain. But it's warm, and that's what matters on a night when frost creeps through every crack in the stone. A servant sweeps past, ladling out thick pottage from a cauldron. It's everything stew should be, vaguely brown, unidentifiable, and steaming hot. Inside, you can make out barley, leeks, maybe a bone or two that used to belong to something with hooves. Each spoonful feels like swallowing a blanket. Across the hall, the lord of the castle sits elevated, literally above everyone else, because class structure doesn't take a night off just because it's snowing. His chair is carved with beasts and vines, his goblet gold, and right beside him is a bowl of salt, not just seasoning, but status. To sit above the salt means you matter. To sit below it? Well, you're probably the one fetching the firewood later. You glance toward the fire pit, the true heart of the room. A massive iron spit turns slowly, roasting a whole boar, skin crackling in rhythm with the harpist's lazy tune. Fat drips and hisses in the flames, sending up a smoky perfume of thyme and apple. The cook, sweating like a saint in purgatory, bastes it with ale, and for a moment, you forget the cold entirely. Someone passes you a trencher loaded with bits of roasted bird, pheasant, maybe partridge, all drowned in a sauce thickened with breadcrumbs. Medieval chefs didn't have cornstarch, so they just pulverized yesterday's loaf into everything. Waste not, right? You bite down and taste spice, pepper, nutmeg, a hint of clove. It's exotic, impossible, like eating the price of a small house. Each grain of peppercorn traveled thousands of miles, across deserts and seas, and somehow ended up in your mouth tonight. Nearby, a minstrel stumbles through a love ballad that sounds suspiciously like a dirge. A dog snores under the table. The snow beats harder against the shutters. But inside, time feels syrup thick, all warmth and laughter and flickering orange light. Someone refills your goblet with ale, cloudy and faintly sour, brewed in the same barrels where laundry used to be done. You sip it anyway, it's surprisingly good. The medieval version of kombucha, with a little buzz that softens the edges of the world. You catch yourself grinning. Maybe this life, for all its filth and frostbite, isn't so bad after all. A child runs past, clutching a wedge of cheese, chased by a half-drunk knight. A servant girl scatters fresh rushes beneath your feet, the medieval version of Swiffering. And you, sitting by the hearth, watching the embers collapse into glowing coals, realize something. This warmth, this food, this noise, it's the only thing standing between the people in this castle and the endless white silence beyond the walls. Somewhere in the corner, a monk visiting from a nearby abbey murmurs a blessing over the feast. His Latin drones like bees, soft and steady. You can almost feel it settling over the room, not as faith, but as comfort. The world outside may be frozen, but here, inside these thick stone walls, there's life, laughter, and the steady rhythm of survival. And as you wipe your hands on your cloak, because napkins are for the future, you realize you've just dined like a lord of winter. Crumbs fall to the floor, where dogs and servants will fight over them later. The hall hums with warmth and gluttony, and the snow keeps falling, soft and relentless, sealing the world in silence. It's strange, comforting, even. You lean back, full, drowsy, and let the flicker of the fire blur your thoughts. Somewhere, in the crackle of the wood and the low murmur of distant conversation, the night hums like a lullaby. Tomorrow, there will be more snow, more bread, more ale, but tonight, you've stepped into the warmest moment of a frozen world, a castle feast on a snowy medieval night. Down the narrow stairwell you go, your boots tapping against the spiral stones slick with age and grease. The warmth from the great hall fades behind you, replaced by the humid breath of the castle's underbelly, the kitchens. It's here, beneath the roaring feast above, that true life beats like a second heart. The cooks don't wear velvet, they wear burns, soot, and exhaustion. Their laughter is rough and their hands move faster than thought, chopping, stirring, shouting over the hiss of boiling pots. The first thing that hits you is the smell, not bad. Exactly, but dense. Layers of onion, meat fat, damp stone, and a whiff of ale gone rogue. It's the perfume of hard work. A cauldron the size of a small bathtub bubbles in the center, its surface broken by lazy bursts of steam. Inside is the eternal stew, pottage, a dish that never truly begins or ends. Every day new ingredients are thrown in. Every night it's ladled out again. You suspect there's a piece of turnip in there older than you. You crouch beside it, feeling the radiant heat kiss your cheeks. Each bubble pops with a small sigh, like the soup is muttering secrets about everyone who's ever eaten from it. The cook, a woman built like an oak trunk, stirs the mixture with a paddle nearly as tall as she is. Don't stand too close. She grunts. The last one got splashed. And we buried him with the ladle. She's joking. Probably. Nearby, another cook kneads bread dough on a long wooden table. His hands moving rhythmically, almost tenderly. The air smells of yeast and hope, the quiet kind that rises slowly. Medieval bread isn't the soft, cloud-like stuff you're used to. It's dense, gritty, and strong enough to double as armor in a pinch. Still, when it's pulled from the oven, steaming and golden, you can't help but reach for a piece. It burns your fingers, but you tear it open anyway. The inside is warm, fragrant, alive. In the corner, a boy no older than 12 turns a spit, sweat glistening on his forehead. His eyes glaze over with the dull patience of someone who's been spinning the same handle for 6 hours. Each time he yawns, he gets a splash of hot grease as punishment from the universe. When he glances your way, you offer him a sympathetic smile. He smirks back and mutters, "At least it's warm down here." Fair point. A tray of trenchers, those edible plates of stale bread, sits by the wall, waiting to be used for the next meal. You pick one up. It's heavy, hard as tile, but there's comfort in its simplicity. In a world where dishes are for the rich, a loaf of bread is democracy itself. And at the end of the night, it'll soak up the juices from the feast, becoming something delicious again. The cycle continues, crumb by crumb. You notice a barrel in the corner marked ale. The brewer, a woman with forearms that could crush walnuts, opens the tap and pours you a mug. It's thick, unfiltered, alive with the hum of yeast. She hands it over with a grin. "Breakfast, lunch, and dinner," she says. You take a sip. It's warm, slightly sour, and tastes of grain and sweat, oddly comforting. Medieval people drank ale like water. Partly because water could literally kill you. Think of it as the Middle Ages version of staying hydrated, just buzzier. At another table, a servant plucks feathers from a duck, humming under her breath. Feathers float through the air like snowflakes that got lost on the way outside. You realize that everything here has a rhythm: chopping, stirring, kneading, turning, a strange orchestra conducted by hunger. On a shelf, jars line up like ancient soldiers: salt, lard, vinegar, dried herbs, and something that might once have been honey. Spices are rare treasures here, black pepper and cinnamon worth their weight in silver. You see a pinch of saffron dissolve into a golden broth, transforming it into something royal. For a moment, you wonder how many sailors and traders suffered just so this kitchen could smell faintly of paradise. Someone opens the door to the courtyard, and a gust of freezing air rushes in, biting your skin. Outside, snowflakes drift down like ash from a white fire. A pig hangs from a hook, its pink body slowly stiffening. A couple of kitchen boys hack at it with small axes, talking about a night's upcoming wedding feast as if discussing the weather. You realize this place, grim, noisy, alive, keeps the entire castle breathing. When the door shuts again, the heat returns, wrapping you in a blanket of noise and scent. The cook beside the cauldron wipes her brow with her sleeve and tastes the stew. She grimaces, tosses in a handful of herbs, then mutters, "That'll do. Lords can't tell the difference anyway." You laugh quietly. But she's not wrong. In the Middle Ages, flavor was a luxury, and texture was an accident. Somewhere above, The faint strains of a harp filter through the stone ceiling. The feast continues in the great hall. Unaware of the symphony of chaos below, you imagine the lords eating, laughing, tossing bones to the floor, never realizing that the real magic, the real warmth, lives down here in the kitchens. You lean against a wall, sipping your ale, watching the steam rise like ghosts from the cauldrons. The boy at the spit hums a tune now. Maybe something he heard drifting down from the feast. You catch yourself smiling again, a little tired, a little odd. If the castle were a body, you think, the great hall would be its face, proud and adorned, but this place, this kitchen, is its beating heart. Every dish, every smell, every clatter of iron and laughter keeps it alive through the long, merciless winter. And as you close your eyes for a moment, letting the warmth soak in, you swear you can feel the heartbeat of history itself pulsing through the floor. You climb back toward the sound of laughter and clinking goblets, following the faint trail of heat and roasted sweetness that drifts up from the kitchen like a spell. The stairwell twists, the air grows lighter, and when you step once more into the great hall, the scene feels richer, louder, somehow closer to a dream. At the long table, the bread has arrived in baskets, and the ale flows freely. You slide into your seat again, and there it is before you, a round loaf. Its crust crisp and dusted with flour. The kind of bread that makes you feel safe even in a world without central heating. Next to it, a jug of ale gleams amber in the firelight, the bubbles winking like little medieval stars. Someone pushes the jug toward you. Drink, they say. It keeps the cold away. You take a long sip, and warmth spreads through your chest, down your arms, into your fingers, a liquid hearth. It's strong but smooth, brewed from barley and honey and a little bit of stubborn optimism. The bread and the ale, that's the foundation of the medieval diet. Forget your kale smoothies, this is what sustained an empire. The bread varies from rich white loaves for the nobility to coarse, dark rye for the peasants. But tonight, you get the good stuff. When you tear it open, steam curls up like a sigh, and the smell is pure comfort, earthy, simple, timeless. You dip the bread into a bowl of broth, thick with lentils and shreds of meat. It's salty, but the warmth makes you forgive everything. Then you realize, it's not broth. It's beer. The cook has poured ale straight into the stew. Because why waste good liquid on drinking alone? You take another bite and almost laugh. Somewhere, a monk is shaking his head. But the flavors are perfect, smoky, bitter, sweet, alive. You glance down the table. The lord at the head is laughing so hard his gold chain rattles. The lady beside him, veiled in soft linen, hides her smile behind her hand. Her goblet is full, her eyes half closed, and for a fleeting second, she looks just like anyone else, warm, sleepy, full. Across from her, a knight in chainmail leans forward, cheeks red, trying to tell a story that's definitely longer than it needs to be. The hall smells of roasted grains, baked bread, and burning pine. It's a perfume of survival. And somehow, it's intoxicating. Bread and ale, you whisper to yourself, the food of everyone. It's true, from peasant huts to royal banquets. Those two simple things united the world. Even when famine struck, even when war trampled the fields, people found ways to make dough rise and barley ferment. Bread was faith in physical form. You need it. You wait. You hope. A young servant refills your goblet. The brewer made this one yesterday. He says, proud as a knight. You nod. The ale is sweet at first. Then earthy. A little cloudy but full of flavor. You think of the women who brewed it, because yes, brewing was a woman's craft. Alewives ran the kettles, watched the mash, tested the flavor, and sold it by the mug. Somewhere, in a cottage beyond these walls, another woman is doing the same. Her hands red from the cold, her breath steaming over the cauldron. You catch a glimpse of the snow through a slit window. It's still falling, silent and thick. The wind rattles the shutters. But inside, the glow is steady. You press your palm against your mug, feeling the heat pulse through the clay. It's easy to imagine that if you just stay here, with this bread, this beer, this fire, winter can't touch you. Someone at the end of the table bangs a spoon against a jug and starts to sing. The tune is simple, the kind of melody that seems older than words. Soon others join in, voices rough but warm, blending like ale foam. The lyrics are about a king, a pig, and too much beer, the holy trinity of medieval humor. You laugh with them, letting the rhythm carry you. The song ends with a cheer, and plates are passed again, bowls of butter, wedges of cheese, and more bread. You spread butter onto a hunk of loaf, it melts almost instantly. Running into the cracks, the first bite is divine. Rich, salty, and impossibly fresh. Someone offers you a sip of posset, hot milk curdled with ale and spiced with nutmeg. You hesitate, then drink. It's strange but soothing, like a medieval version of hot chocolate that wants to pick a fight. The knight across from you wipes his mouth and says, "They say the bread keeps a man strong, and the ale keeps him brave." You smile and reply, "Then tonight, I'll be both." He laughs, slams his mug against yours, and drinks deeply. The sound of it echoes off the stone walls, the sound of warmth defeating the cold. For just one night, the fire flares, casting dancing light over everything, the silver cups, the bread crumbs, the laughing faces. You lean back, feeling that slow, heavy comfort that comes after good food and good company. Somewhere, the cook below is already preparing tomorrow's dough. The yeast will rise again. It always does. As the night stretches on, the snow outside thickens into silence, and the great hall breathes like a living thing, warm, smoky, full of life. The bread grows stale, the ale runs low, and the fire sinks into embers. But for now, you are here, in the glow of history, eating the same bread and drinking the same ale that warmed hearts centuries ago. And it's enough. The fire has died down to a soft orange glow, its warmth stretching lazily across the hall like a cat refusing to move. You sit a little closer to your plate, your fingers tracing the rim of your goblet. Someone's talking about salt, of all things, and suddenly the entire table seems to lean in. You wouldn't think a mineral could stir so much passion. But in the Middle Ages, salt wasn't just seasoning, it was status. Above the salt, the steward says with a wink, is where the Lord sits. Below it, he gestures vaguely toward the far end of the table, where the servants and lesser guests are crowded together, sharing bowls and stories. Everyone laughs, but you can feel the truth humming underneath. Salt divides, a simple, shining line between those who rule and those who carry the platters. You glance at the salt bowl in front of you, carved from ivory, filled with coarse, white crystals that shimmer in the firelight. It's beautiful in a quiet way, like frost that never melts. When you pinch a bit and sprinkle it on your bread, it crackles faintly between your fingers. For a moment, you imagine the hands that mined it, men and women sweating deep underground, chiseling away at the earth for a treasure that tastes like the sea. Salt keeps food from rotting, but it also keeps people alive. Without it, you'd wither in the cold. You think about that as you chew, that the same thing preserving your meat was once more valuable than gold. It was power disguised as flavor. Across the hall, the lord of the castle dips his knife into the salt and sprinkles it over his venison. The gesture is small, but it's like watching a king crown himself all over again. You almost laugh, it's absurd. How ceremony can cling to the smallest things. But that's how humans work. Even in the darkest winters, we invent rituals to make ourselves feel a little less fragile. A servant passes by carrying a tray of boiled vegetables, carrots, turnips, leeks. They're pale and soft, but glisten under a drizzle of melted butter. You take a spoonful and taste the salt again, sharp and bright against the earthiness. Suddenly, you understand the obsession. It's not about the taste alone, it's about control over decay, over hunger, over the chaos of nature. Do you know, says the knight sitting next to you, leaning in with a conspiratorial grin, that soldiers were once paid in salt? You raise an eyebrow. He nods solemnly. That's where the word salary comes from. He looks ridiculously pleased with himself, as if he's just invented etymology. You smile, taking another sip of ale. The history nerd in you is delighted. He goes on, salt was taxed, traded, even fought over. There were whole wars over this. He gestures dramatically with a piece of bread, scattering crumbs like snowflakes. Can you imagine? You nod. Of course you can. Humans have started wars over far stranger things: love, pride, fashion, and occasionally, pigs. A murmur spreads down the table as the Lord himself stands. He raises a silver goblet. To the sea, he declares, and to the men who bring us its salt. The hall echoes with cheers and the clatter of cups. You lift yours too, and as you drink, the ale burns pleasantly at the back of your throat. Outside, the wind howls like an old dog. Inside, the air is warm and salty sweet. You find yourself thinking that salt might be the perfect symbol for this world, small, essential, invisible until it's gone. When you were a child, salt was something you never thought about. It just existed, a sprinkle here, a dash there. But here, in this castle, it's a reminder that survival in winter isn't just about warmth. It's about preservation, of food, yes, but also of dignity. At the far end of the hall, a servant spills a little of the precious salt. The room goes silent for a heartbeat. Then, as if by instinct, she quickly throws a pinch over her left shoulder, to blind the devil waiting there. A superstition born from fear and faith and far too many cold nights. The tension breaks. Laughter returns. Someone mutters, "Good save," and the feast resumes. You chew another bite of bread, feeling the grit of salt on your tongue. It's amazing how something so small can hold so much meaning. In this world of ice and stone, salt is life condensed, a tiny, glittering rebellion against decay. The minstrel begins to play again. A slow tune this time. And voices hum along. The Lord leans back in his chair. Satisfied. The servants relax. The guests smile. And for a moment, everything feels suspended, balanced perfectly between hunger and fullness. Winter and warmth. Power and peace. You rest your chin on your hand and watch the salt shimmer in the candlelight. It's strange, you think, how history hides in plain sight. Not always in battles or crowns, but in the quiet, crystalline moments that flavor a life. As the song fades, you take one last sip of ale and smile to yourself. Salt, it doesn't just season the food. It seasons the world. The air has grown heavier with the scent of meat and spice. And now, a low cheer ripples through the hall, the kind of sound people make when the main event finally arrives. You turn, and there it is, the roast boar. It glides in like a celebrity, carried on a massive wooden platter by 4 sweating servants. Its skin glistens, lacquered gold and crackling like thin glass. The mouth stuffed with a red apple that gleams almost absurdly bright in the candlelight. The boar is more than dinner. It's theater. Its power carved and roasted. Its tusks have been polished. Its back sprinkled with herbs and breadcrumbs that sparkle like snow. The aroma alone is dizzying, a mix of smoke, thyme, and something sweet you can't quite name. Honey, maybe, or the promise of indulgence. You find yourself leaning forward, drawn by the rhythm of knives and applause. The lord of the castle stands, raises his cup, and declares, "For courage, for the hunt, for the feast." Then he plunges the blade into the boar's flank. The skin cracks open with a sound that's both satisfying and slightly horrifying. A puff of steam escapes, carrying the scent of roasted apples and sizzling fat. When the first slice lands on your trencher, you can barely wait. The meat is tender, marbled with just enough fat to melt on your tongue. It tastes wild, dark, gamey, as if the forest itself left its fingerprint there. Beneath the spice, you can almost taste the snow and pine. Someone near you laughs. A feast without a boar is like a knight without armor. They say, wiping grease from their chin. You nod, because they're right. In medieval times, this wasn't just food, it was ceremony. Proof that winter hadn't won yet. A servant brings a bowl of sauce, thick and glossy, and pours a spoonful over your meat. It's sharp, tangy, faintly sweet, apple and vinegar, she says proudly. You take a bite and feel the balance, rich meat tamed by bright fruit. It's shockingly modern, you think. Michelin-starred chefs would kill for this level of instinct. On the far end of the table, a young minstrel sings about King Arthur's Christmas feast, where knights carved boars and dragons for the round table. The lyrics are half forgotten, half improvised, but the rhythm is strong. You tap your fingers along to it, half dazed from warmth and wine. You glance toward the kitchen doors. Through the crack, you see more servants carrying trays, roasted birds, venison pies, bowls of boiled beans, and trenchers stacked like golden shields. The air hums with noise and life. You can't help but imagine the hunt that came before this. The lord and his men, wrapped in furs, trudging through the frozen woods. Dogs barking, spears ready. The first sight of the boar, its breath clouding in the air. Its eyes fierce. The chase, the shouts, the moment of triumph. Now, that story has become dinner. The knight beside you grins through a mouthful. You know, he says, the Romans used to serve boar with dates and honey. Said it pleased the gods. He pauses, licking his fingers. Here, we just please ourselves. You laugh softly. Somewhere, a historian is crying. You notice the apple still wedged in the boar's mouth. It's glossy, perfect, symbolic, but untouched. You imagine someone, hours from now, sneaking a bite just for curiosity's sake, and then regretting it instantly. A boy pours you another cup of ale. You thank him, noticing how his hands shake from the heat of the room. He smiles shyly and hurries off. The candlelight catches on the golden juice running from the boar's side. And for a second, the whole scene looks like something painted centuries later, rich, decadent, and slightly unreal. As you chew, you think of how much labor hides behind every bite. The hunters, the cooks, the servants, the farmers, all invisible, all essential. History loves its lords, but it's built by those who sweat in the smoke. Someone across the table sneezes loudly, and everyone bursts into laughter. Too much pepper, someone shouts. And for a moment, even the Lord chuckles. You realize it's true, the air is thick with spice. Pepper, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, all imported, all expensive. You sneeze too, earning a grin from your neighbor. It's strange. The snow outside howls like a wolf. But in here, life is unstoppable. Every sound, laughter, music, the steady crackle of the fire, feels like defiance against the cold. You lean back, belly warm, fingers greasy, and sigh in satisfaction. Across the hall, the boar's carcass gleams under the torchlight, both trophy and sacrifice. A reminder that every feast is fleeting, every fire temporary. The minstrel finishes his song with a triumphant strum, and the guests cheer. Someone toasts to the hunt, another to the cook, and someone else, already half asleep, mutters, "To more boar." You smile, watching the candlelight tremble on the stone walls. Outside, the storm still rages. Inside, you're safe, full, and a little drowsy. If warmth had a taste, you think, it would taste exactly like this: roasted boar, applesauce, and the faint echo of laughter against the snow. By now, the feast has settled into a pleasant rhythm, laughter like soft percussion. Spoons chiming faintly against wooden bowls. Firelight pulsing in time with conversation. You reach for a slice of bread to soak up what's left of your boar sauce. But then, something catches your eye. A small silver box being opened carefully at the high table. The smell that follows is unmistakable, sharp, warm, and utterly foreign. Pepper, real black pepper. The murmur around the room shifts. Voices dropping into reverent awe. Pepper isn't just a spice here, it's a miracle. You can almost feel everyone's attention stretch toward that little box like flowers reaching for sunlight. A servant brings a small dish to your end of the table, roasted chicken. Glazed with honey, dusted with a constellation of black specks. You lean closer. The scent is electric, like heat and sweetness fused into something alive. When you take a bite, the pepper hits, warm, bright, quick as a spark. You laugh quietly. It's thrilling. The perfect shock in a world of bland porridge. Across the table, an old knight nods approvingly. From the Indies, he says, tapping the side of his nose as though he smuggled it here himself. Came by caravan, through desert and sea, worth more than gold. You nod back, chewing slowly. Each grain on your tongue feels like it carries a story, 1,000 hands. A dozen ships, a few lost lives. You reach for your mug and wash the spice down with ale. How do they even get it here, you ask? The knight chuckles. Ah, my friend, that's the question. Some say the pepper grows in snake-guarded gardens. Others say it's gathered by men who bargain with dragons. You raise an eyebrow. Dragons? He shrugs. Serious as stone. You know how merchants are. A good story doubles the price. You can't help but grin. The absurdity is part of the charm. Then the steward claps his hands. The next dish, he calls. And another wave of scent rolls across the hall. Cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, cardamom, a sweet, strange perfume that doesn't belong in this frozen place. Someone mutters that the cook must have emptied the spice chest. Someone else mutters that she's a magician. Both might be true. The dish is brought out. Roasted carrots and onions swimming in a sauce thickened with almonds. Spiced so richly that even the air feels warmer. You dip your spoon in. It's sweet and sharp, ancient and new all at once. You close your eyes and taste the faraway world, Arabia, Venice, maybe even India. You can almost hear the waves slapping against a wooden hull. The creak of a merchant ship carrying these flavors to the edge of the known world. And suddenly, the whole feast feels connected to something vast, bigger than the castle. Bigger than the snowstorm raging outside. Every bite is geography. Every spice is a whisper from somewhere hot, bright, and impossibly far away. Do you know, says the steward, leaning in as if sharing gossip, that our Lord once traded a horse for a pouch of saffron? You nearly choke on your ale. A horse? He nods solemnly. A fine one too. Chestnut mare. He said the color matched. You burst out laughing. It's both ridiculous and weirdly poetic, trading a creature of speed for a taste of sunlight. At the high table, the Lord himself lifts a golden cup filled with a deep red broth, shimmering with threads of saffron. The light turns his drink into liquid fire. He takes a sip, closes his eyes, and smiles. Around him, people murmur approval, not because they can taste it, but because they can imagine it. The conversation turns to spice routes, to traders, to stories half true and half drunk. Someone swears they once saw a peppercorn so large it could be used as a marble. Someone else claims nutmeg can cure sadness, though, judging by his expression, he's testing that theory nightly. You notice that the laughter around the table has changed. It's slower now, deeper. The food and drink have softened everyone. The hall feels warmer, almost too warm. The combination of fire, spice, and wine makes your eyelids heavy. You glance toward the window again, snow still falling, still endless, but inside, the heat from these faraway flavors has built its own climate. You can almost pretend the castle sits somewhere tropical, that the wind outside is just a memory. Funny, you think. How spice is really just a memory of the sun. A servant refills your goblet with something dark and sweet, mulled wine. Maybe, scented with cloves and honey. The first sip tastes like warmth itself, with a sly, peppery bite at the end. The second sip feels like a secret. Someone starts singing a love song about a woman who smells like cinnamon. Someone else laughs so hard they nearly choke on their stew. The fire flares again, brighter than before, as if the world outside has disappeared entirely. You rest your elbows on the table, your hands around your cup, and think of all the people who risked their lives so a castle full of strangers could taste a single grain of pepper. The absurdity of it, the beauty of it, it's all there, swirling in your mouth with the wine. Above the wind, above the laughter, above the crackling of the fire, you hear your own quiet thought echo in your head. Food isn't just what keeps people alive. It's what reminds them that living is still worth it. By the time the last of the pepper-laced wine has been drained, the great hall smells faintly of spice, smoke, and satisfaction. The servants are already clearing plates and trenchers, stacking them into wobbling towers like edible architecture. You sit back, full and slightly dazed, when a new scent drifts through the air, salty, briny, like the ghost of the sea had slipped through the cracks in the castle wall. Fish. At first, it feels out of place here, in this inland fortress surrounded by frost and forest, but then you remember, it's Friday. A day of fasting, no meat, only fish, because heaven apparently has dietary restrictions. The hall quiets a little. The plates change. Gone are the heavy roasts and golden crusts. Now come the trays of salted cod, dried herring, and smoked eel, all caught months ago, preserved with enough salt to pickle your soul. You take a piece of the cod. It's stiff as parchment, pale as bone. You chew it slowly, and the salt bites back. Your tongue tingles, your lips burn, and your thirst returns with a vengeance. Someone nearby mutters, "A meal fit for a monk." Another replies, "Yes, one being punished." But there's comfort in it, too. The salt wakes you up, sharp and alive. The fish has been soaked, softened, coaxed back from the dead by patient hands. It's tough, but there's honesty in its toughness, a kind of stubborn survival that mirrors the people eating it. Across the hall, the steward announces the next dish, smoked herring and mustard sauce. A few guests groan, but others perk up. You're curious. The sauce, it turns out, is thick and tangy, made from crushed mustard seeds, vinegar, and wine. When you dip the fish in, the flavor explodes, sharp, sweet, fiery. It cuts straight through the salt, balancing the harshness with heat. You blink in surprise. This is actually good. A woman seated nearby catches your expression and grins. Better than it looks, isn't it? She says, tearing off a piece of bread. We owe it to the monks. They've been perfecting this for centuries. You nod, impressed. Monks, the quiet heroes of medieval cuisine. Brewing, pickling, curing, fermenting, all in the name of faith. Or maybe just because boredom and winter are powerful motivators. You take another bite and ask, where does all this fish come from? We're miles from the coast. She leans in, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. From everywhere, she says, the North Sea, the Baltic, the rivers, barrels upon barrels, packed in salt, hauled across kingdoms. She pauses. Some say there's more fish in the markets than stars in the sky. You laugh softly. Sounds like an exaggeration. She shrugs. Maybe, but tell that to the man hauling a barrel through the snow. The conversation fades into the general hum of the hall. The flicker of torches dances across faces, flushed, tired, content. The snow still falls outside, tapping faintly at the shutters. like an impatient guest that no one dares to invite in. A servant refills your cup with a dark liquid. You sip, expecting ale, but it's something thicker, a hot, spiced broth made from fish bones, herbs, and vinegar. The warmth slides down your throat, leaving behind a strange but not unpleasant aftertaste. It's the kind of flavor that reminds you food wasn't always about pleasure, sometimes. It was just about endurance. Then comes the star of the fasting table, a great pie filled with eels and boiled eggs, baked into a crust so sturdy it could double as armor. You cut a piece and watch the steam curl upward. The eel is soft, rich, almost buttery, the eggs adding a delicate balance. A feast without meat. Someone jokes, but not without sin. You laugh, because it's true, somehow. Even restraint here tastes like indulgence. The Lord himself eats heartily, salt shining on his lips, his goblet refilled with watered wine. The church may forbid meat, he declares, but it never said we couldn't enjoy ourselves. The hall bursts into laughter and applause. Even the steward cracks a smile. As the servants bring out bowls of pickled onions and vinegar greens to cleanse the palate, you realize how clever this meal really is. In a world without refrigeration, this is survival science disguised as dinner. Salt, smoke, and vinegar, the trinity of preservation. Every bite carries months of planning, trade, and trust in chemistry no one yet understands. You run your fingers along your cup, watching the reflection of the fire twist in the liquid. The snow outside doesn't frighten you anymore. There's something defiant about this table, a kind of stubborn joy that refuses to vanish. Even when the land freezes, a dog sneezes under the bench, scattering a few fish bones. Someone tosses it a piece of crust. The minstrel starts plucking his lute again, this time singing a song about sailors who fell in love with mermaids and came back with nothing but barrels of herring. Everyone laughs, though a few make the sign of the cross, just in case. As the laughter fades, you notice the faint tang of salt still on your tongue. It's sharp, but grounding. Outside, the storm keeps whispering, endless and cold. Inside, the fire hisses softly, and the scent of smoked fish lingers like memory. For a moment, you think about the hands that caught this food, fishermen rocking on gray waves. Faces raw from wind, their world is water and risk. Yours is stone and warmth. Yet somehow the same meal connects you. You take one last bite and smile to yourself. The snow can fall as long as it wants. The sea has already found a way inside. The smell reaches you before the servants do, rich, buttery, and faintly sweet, with a hint of something mysterious and earthy. The laughter around the hall quiets again as wooden platters appear from the kitchen. Someone whispers, "It's eel pie night," and instantly, a ripple of excitement passes through the room. The platters arrive steaming, the crusts puffed and golden, sealed so tight they look almost sculpted. One of the cooks must have brushed the tops with egg yolk before baking, because the pies gleam in the candlelight like polished treasure. The knife slips in, the crust breaks with a sigh, and a wave of hot air rolls out, rich with the scent of broth, herbs, and eel. Eel, the thought makes you hesitate for half a heartbeat. Then you take a bite, and your hesitation dissolves. It's soft and buttery, almost like fish mixed with chicken and cream. swimming in a sauce thickened with breadcrumbs and spiced with pepper and nutmeg. There's a gentle sweetness too, maybe from onions stewed until they forgot they were vegetables. It's astonishingly good. You lean back and laugh quietly. Eel pie, you whisper to yourself. Who would have thought? Across the table, an old woman nods knowingly. They kept us alive during the famine, she says, breaking her crust apart with her fingers. The rivers used to boil with them, thousands, shining like black ribbons. Now we trap fewer, but when we do, we make the most of them. Her tone carries that peculiar blend of reverence and weariness that comes only from survival. You nod, taking another bite. The warmth spreads through you again, deeper this time, heavier. A young kitchen boy comes by, balancing a tray of more pies. Would you like seconds? He asks, voice cracking with exhaustion. You smile, wave him on. The man beside you doesn't hesitate. Bring two, he says, grinning, one for me, and one for my sins. Laughter rolls through the table. But behind it, you catch something else, pride. Because eel pie isn't just comfort food, it's an invention born from scarcity. When winters were cruel and hunts failed, rivers became the pantry of last resort. Eels were the meat that didn't spoil quickly. That thrived in cold and mud. That refused to die even when the world froze. The woman across from you raises her mug. To the eels, she says, they fed saints and sinners alike. Everyone cheers, half in jest, half in truth. You notice how easily laughter fills the air now. The heavy hush of the early feast has melted into warmth. Even the servants smile as they pass, catching bits of jokes and dropping quiet replies of their own. Someone starts a game of guessing which lord will fall asleep first. The odds favor the one currently using his goblet as a pillow. You turn your gaze toward the hearth. The fire dances low, its light pooling across the floor. The cook, the same broad-shouldered woman you saw in the kitchens earlier, sits by the doorway. Her arms crossed, watching the crowd. There's a tiny smirk on her face. The kind only someone who's pulled off a miracle allows themselves. You raise your goblet slightly toward her in salute. She doesn't notice, but somehow, it feels right anyway. The conversation turns, as it often does after a few hours of food and ale, toward superstition. The knight beside you claims eels are sacred, that Saint Hildegard once wrote they cure melancholy. A scholar across the room insists they're demonic creatures, born from mud and thunder, cursed by God for their slipperiness. They have no bones, he says solemnly. That's unnatural. Someone corrects him, gently. But not gently enough, and the argument devolves into laughter again. It's absurd, you think, but charmingly so. Everything in this world is alive with meaning. Food isn't just sustenance, it's a story, a symbol, a superstition on a plate. You dip your bread into the sauce. Thick and shimmering, the taste has changed slightly as it's cooled, deeper now. The spice settling, the eel melting into something like velvet. You imagine how monks in their cold stone abbeys must have eaten this in silence. Steam rising around them like incense. History, you think, tastes like patience. The minstrel begins to play a low tune, plucking gently at the strings. The melody is soft, a little sad, something about rivers, home, and the warmth of shared bread. You feel the edges of sleep creeping in. That gentle drowsiness born of food, wine, and firelight. The hall around you blurs slightly. Its laughter and warmth blending into one long sigh of comfort. A few guests rise to leave, their cloaks heavy with fur, their faces glowing with drink. The door creaks open, and a gust of cold air rushes in, sharp, merciless, real. You shiver instinctively. Then the door closes again, and the warmth wraps you once more, rich with spice and smoke and the faint, briny memory of the sea. You take one last bite of pie. The crust flakes, the eel melts, and for a fleeting second, you taste something beyond history, that perfect, impossible balance between necessity and pleasure. You smile, murmuring under your breath, the best meals are the ones that remember how hard they were to make. Then you lean back, eyelids heavy, listening to the crackle of the fire and the slow, steady heartbeat of the hall. The air grows soft and sweet again, a whisper of honey, ginger, and something darker that clings to the breath like memory. The servants return one last time from the kitchens, each balancing a wooden tray covered in small, delicate shapes dusted with sugar. You lean forward, curious. At first glance, they look like bricks, golden, dense, sharp-edged. But then the scent hits you, sharp ginger, clove, cinnamon, and that deep sweetness that can only come from molasses or honey. Gingerbread. You smile before you even taste it. The aroma alone feels like comfort. The steward grins as he sets a piece before you. A Christmas delight, he says proudly, for kings and commoners alike, though mostly kings. You pick up a piece. It's warm, firm but pliant, and as you bite down, the texture surprises you, chewy at first, then crisp at the edges. With heat blooming at the back of your tongue, you close your eyes. The flavor is bold and bright, a miniature world of spice and warmth. Careful, the woman beside you says, laughing softly. Too much of that and you'll start seeing angels. Too late, you reply, smiling back, I think I'm already halfway there. It's hard to imagine that 1,000 years ago, this simple treat was considered exotic. In those days, ginger was treasure, sugar was wealth, and flour was hope. A single tray of gingerbread could represent an entire year's worth of trade and labor, all baked into a form you could hold in your hand. You look around the hall. Every guest is grinning now, breaking their gingerbread into small pieces, comparing shapes and textures. Some have been pressed into wooden molds, hearts, lions, castles. A child runs past holding one shaped like a knight, his laughter ringing clear as bells. You glance down at yours, a square stamped with a little sunburst. The edges crumble slightly as you turn it in your hand. They used to carve prayers into them. Someone says nearby, "Eat the words, and the blessing stays with you." You smile, and if you eat too many blessings? The man laughs. Then you start glowing, I suppose. You take another bite, savoring the warmth spreading through you. Gingerbread isn't just dessert, it's medicine disguised as joy. In the coldest months, ginger soothed the stomach, lifted the spirit, and gave the illusion of summer heat when the world was buried in frost. A servant passes with a jug of hot wine. You dip your gingerbread briefly. The edges softening, the flavors merge, wine, spice, honey, and heat, and suddenly the world feels very far away, and yet impossibly close. The minstrel begins another tune, something gentle, almost playful. His fingers pluck the strings as softly as falling snow. The melody twists through the hall like smoke, winding between laughter and whispers. You take another small bite, careful not to finish too quickly. The ginger burns pleasantly, and you remember what one old herbalist once wrote, that ginger fires the heart and quickens the blood. You can feel it, your fingertips are warm, your thoughts glowing faintly gold. The woman beside you sighs happily. We bake it every year, she says, even when there's no ginger. We use pepper instead. It's not the same, but it's something. You nod. It's the remembering that matters. Isn't it? She smiles. Exactly. Even when you can't taste it, you can still imagine it. The fire crackles louder, throwing long shadows across the hall. For a moment, the laughter fades, and the world narrows to the simple rhythm of chewing, breathing, and warmth. The candles flicker. Outside, the snow presses harder against the windows. But you don't care. You feel wrapped in something sacred, not prayer, but presence. The steward claps twice, and servants appear with more gingerbread, this time shaped into small figures and towers. For the children, he announces, though everyone knows the adults will steal a few. A little girl approaches the table shyly, her hands clasped. The Lord smiles and offers her one shaped like a bird. For luck, he says. She beams, curtsies, and scurries away. The entire hall seems to soften at the sight. You take one last piece of gingerbread, pressing your thumb into it to feel its texture, firm, fragrant, almost alive. You imagine all the hands that brought it here, sailors, merchants, bakers, cooks, all the miles of road, all the storms at sea, all for a single bite of sweetness on a frozen night. It's humbling, really, how something so small can carry the whole world within it. You finish the last crumb, licking a trace of honey from your fingertips. The sweetness lingers, the ginger still glowing in your chest. The minstrel's song fades. The fire sighs. Around you, people smile, their laughter quieter now, their eyes softer. In the deep of winter, with the world frozen beyond the walls, you realize something simple and beautiful. Luxury isn't gold, or jewels, or power. It's this, a crumb of sweetness, a warm room, and the company of others who can still laugh despite the cold. You breathe out slowly, the taste of spice and honey clinging to the air like memory. The fire has burned down to glowing embers, and the hall glows with that late feast quiet, full bellies, flushed faces, the soft rattle of goblets against wood. But from somewhere near the high table comes a flash of white. A small sculpture carried carefully through the crowd. At first, you think it's made of marble, smooth, luminous, impossibly delicate. Then the warmth of the fire catches it, and a faint sheen begins to glimmer. It's not marble, it's sugar. You sit up straighter. The murmurs ripple through the hall as servants begin setting down these strange, shining creations. A swan with spread wings. A castle with turrets fine as lace. A coiled dragon biting its tail. All of them sculpted entirely from sugar, molded, melted, carved. The Lord smiles like a magician revealing his final trick. From the kitchens of Naples, he announces proudly, the finest art of confection, sugarworks fit for a king. You stare, utterly spellbound. The candlelight shimmers across every curve, every feather. These are not desserts, they're miracles. You can't even imagine the hours, the care, the trembling hands that shape them. Sugar in this age isn't something you sprinkle, it's something you worship. A servant approaches with a small, glistening tower shaped like a cathedral. You lean closer, eyes wide. The surface is smooth and translucent, like glass that has forgotten to be cold. You reach out, half afraid it might shatter if you breathe too hard. Go on, the servant whispers, smiling. It's meant to be eaten. You break off a corner, thin as eggshell, crisp as frost, and place it on your tongue. It melts instantly, flooding your mouth with sweetness so pure it almost stings. You blink in surprise. For a moment, you taste nothing but sunlight and distance. Someone nearby sighs audibly. The taste of heaven, they murmur. And they're not far off. In the Middle Ages, sugar was still a rarity, worth its weight in silver. It came from faraway fields, from islands and deserts and lands most people here would never see. To eat sugar was to consume power, to prove that winter and want could be conquered. If only for a night. You glance around the hall. Even the roughest knights have gone still, staring as servants carry more sculptures through the crowd, trees dripping with crystal fruit, towers of candied almonds, golden birds perched on spun sugar branches. It's surreal, a banquet within a banquet. The minstrel plucks a slow, sweet melody. Someone hums softly along. You sip your wine, still tasting sugar on your tongue, and realize this isn't just indulgence, it's storytelling. The nobles build sweetness the way priests build altars, as proof of grace, of mastery over nature itself. A man at the next table leans close, his eyes gleaming. They say sugar first came from India. He whispers, from reeds that bled honey when cut. He grins. Imagine that. Plants that weep sweetness. You chuckle softly, and now we sculpt angels from it. He nods. Progress, or blasphemy, depends who you ask. The lady beside him adds, they used to call it white gold, worth dying for, if you were foolish enough to guard it on the road. You swirl your wine, watching the light refract through the liquid like melted sugar itself. I think, you say quietly, we've always been willing to risk everything for sweetness. Her eyes soften, maybe because we never have enough of it. A silence falls between you for a moment, not heavy, but thoughtful. The fire crackles, throwing light across the sculptures, which now begin to sag slightly in the heat. A sugar swan bows its neck, a tower leans. For a moment, it looks like time itself is reclaiming the feast, melting its marvels back into memory. The cook steps forward, smiling like an alchemist who's finally shown her secret. Eat quickly, she says, before the angels melt. You break another piece from the swan, a wing this time. It crumbles gently in your fingers, leaving a fine dust of sweetness on your skin. The taste this time is softer, almost floral, as if the sugar has remembered the cane it came from. All around you, laughter and gasps mingle. Children reach up on tiptoes to steal bits from the sugar castles. Knights pretend to duel with caramel swords. Even the Lord himself breaks a piece from the dragon's tail and pops it into his mouth with boyish delight. And in that moment, you realize something simple and profound. They're all children again, every single one of them, lords, ladies, servants, all caught in wonder at the fragile miracle of sugar. The hall, so often filled with talk of battle and politics, now hums only with delight. The air smells of caramel and wood smoke. Someone sneezes, a fine puff of sugar dust catching the firelight, and the laughter that follows is pure, unguarded, real. You lean back, smiling to yourself. It's strange, you think. We build the sweetest things knowing they'll melt. But maybe that's the point. Maybe beauty is meant to vanish, to remind us that warmth and wonder are fleeting, and that's what makes them precious. The swan's head finally slumps, its delicate neck collapsing into a puddle of gold. The guests applaud softly, as if honoring a life well lived. You raise your cup to the melting sculptures and whisper, half to yourself, to sweetness, and to its briefness. The sugar glows one last time in the firelight, then surrenders to the heat. By now, the air in the hall feels thick and slow, like a dream trying not to end. The sugar sculptures have nearly vanished, collapsed into golden puddles that glint faintly in the candlelight. A few guests trace their fingers through the syrup, laughing softly, childlike. Someone sighs, a pity sweetness never lasts. But the steward claps twice, and a new kind of whisper stirs the crowd. This time it's not about sweetness, but balance. The physician priest will speak. He announces. A thin man in robes, half monk, half scholar, steps forward from the shadows. His hair gleams silver in the firelight, his fingers stained faintly green from herbs. He bows slightly to the Lord, then to the guests. My friends, he begins, his voice calm and deliberate. You have eaten well tonight, perhaps too well. A ripple of laughter moves through the room. He smiles faintly, in the humors of the body. He continues, as in the seasons of the world, there must be harmony between heat and cold, wet and dry. Too much of one, and the body suffers. You tilt your head, intrigued. Ah yes, humoral theory, the medieval science of the soul and stomach. The monk gestures toward the remains of the feast. Boar and venison, hot and dry. Ale and bread, warm and moist. But sugar, wine, and spice, they heat the blood. You will need cool things to temper them, or you will wake with a headache fit for Lucifer himself. The hall bursts into laughter. Louder this time, someone shouts, then bring us snow to chew. Not snow, the monk replies smoothly. Lettuce, almonds, milk, or vinegar. These soothe the bile and calm the passions. The knight beside you nudges your arm. He means to spoil the fun. You smile. He means to keep us alive until tomorrow. The monk raises a small clay jar from the table beside him. Here, he says, our kitchens prepare this for the lords and ladies after feasts, a tonic of rosewater, honey, and vinegar, to balance the humors and cool the stomach. He pours a few drops into a silver cup and passes it down the table. The scent is delicate, roses and apples, faintly sour but somehow comforting. You take a sip. The liquid hits your tongue like a sigh, sweet first, then tart, leaving a clean coolness behind. You exhale softly. That's surprisingly pleasant. The monk smiles. Pleasure and balance are not enemies, only partners who quarrel often. It's a line so wise that even the drunkest knight nearby stops chewing long enough to nod solemnly. You think about that as you sip again. In a world where medicine and superstition mingle freely, there's something touching about this, how people tried to explain warmth and sickness, hunger and joy, using the same language of elements and seasons. Too much hot food might mean anger, too much cold could mean sadness. The goal wasn't just to live, but to feel right within the world. The monk continues his quiet sermon. Spices warm the heart, but too much can inflame the spirit. Meat strengthens, but it also binds the blood. A wise man learns not only what to eat, but when. A voice calls from the far table. When the kitchen's open, and laughter rolls again. The monk chuckles softly. That, too, he admits. He raises his cup, the rose-colored tonic glowing faintly in the firelight. To harmony, he says. To harmony, the guests echo, lifting whatever drink they have left. You sip once more, feeling the coolness settle into you, spreading through the rich heaviness of the feast. It's as if all the fire and spice of the evening has been coaxed into stillness. Your head clears, your body hums quietly, like a lute string just plucked and left to resonate. The lady across from you leans forward. Do you think it works? She asks, tapping her empty cup. You smile. Maybe it's not about the drink. You say, maybe it's about believing in balance. She tilts her head, considering that, then smiles back. Then I'll believe in both. The minstrel begins another slow tune, something soft and meditative. His song drifts through the smoke. The words barely audible, too hot, too cold, too much, too little. The world turns steady if the heart stays middle. The guests sway gently to the rhythm, eyes half closed. Even the fire seems to soften its crackle to match. You lean back, watching the flicker of flame across the long table, across the half-empty dishes, the crumbs, the sugar melting into dreams. It all feels suddenly symbolic, the heat of spice, the cool of milk, the balance between indulgence and restraint. Life, like dinner, is always a matter of proportion. The monk retreats quietly to his corner, and someone jokes that the balance of humors has now been restored, meaning, of course, it's time for more wine. You laugh, sipping the last of your rose tonic. The sour-sweet taste lingers on your tongue like memory. You think of all the rules these people lived by. All the strange little systems they built to make sense of hunger and desire. And in a way, it's beautiful, this endless human need to find order in chaos. To turn even appetite into philosophy. The wind howls faintly outside, but inside, everything feels balanced. Warmth and coolness, hunger and fullness, chaos and calm. You set your cup down, smiling faintly to yourself. The old monk is right. You think, pleasure and balance do quarrel often, but maybe that's what keeps the heart alive. The feast drifts into that tender hour when fullness becomes fatigue, when laughter softens. Voices slow, and the glow of the candles feels more like moonlight than fire. The great hall breathes like a sleeping giant, the air heavy with smoke, spice, and the faint perfume of rose tonic. You glance toward the far end of the table. The lords and ladies are leaning back in their chairs, hands resting on rounded stomachs, eyes gleaming with satisfaction, but beyond them, past the line of gold goblets and silk sleeves, your gaze falls on another table, smaller, dimly lit, near the kitchen doors. The servants' table. They're laughing too, though more quietly. Their plates are humbler, rough bread, broth, a heel of cheese, a bit of roasted root vegetable scavenged from the main feast. And yet, there's a brightness to their laughter that feels lighter, freer. You find yourself drawn to it. You rise from your seat, stretching, pretending to fetch more wine. The night beside you is too drowsy to notice your absence. As you move down the hall, the sounds of the noble table fade, replaced by the rhythm of clinking ladles and the crackle of fresh logs being added to the kitchen fire. The air here is thicker, alive with movement. A few servants glance up, startled to see you approach. But no one stops you. One girl, barely 16, smiles shyly and gestures toward a bench. "Hungry still?" she teases. You grin, curious, mostly. She shrugs, ladling a scoop of thick vegetable stew into a wooden bowl. Curiosity's cheaper than hunger. You sit, the bench rough under you but warm from proximity to the fire. The bowl steams in your hands. It's not fine, no herbs, no spices, no exotic ingredients, but it smells honest: onions, leeks, cabbage, a whisper of barley. You take a spoonful. It's thin, a little smoky, and utterly satisfying. "Good, isn't it?" the girl says. "The nobles don't know what they're missing." You laugh softly. "I think they'd riot if they tasted something this plain." She grins, tearing a piece of black bread and dipping it into her bowl. "Plain keeps you warm, fancy just keeps you talking." Her words hang in the air. Simple but true. Around you, the other servants eat quickly, efficiently, but not unhappily. One hums a tune you recognize, the same melody the minstrel was playing earlier. Though here it sounds gentler, more human. You notice a boy carrying a pot of leftover gravy toward the back door. "Where's that going?" you ask. "To the dogs," someone replies without looking up. "They'll be hungry by morning." It hits you, this quiet ecosystem of warmth and waste, survival and generosity. Nothing truly disappears in this castle, it just moves down the ladder. What's left from the Lord's table becomes the servant's meal. What's left from theirs becomes the dog's. What's left after that feeds the earth itself. It's humbling. A man with soot on his hands sits down beside you, balancing a chunk of cheese on his knee. "You're not one of us," he says, not unkindly, "but you're eating like one." You nod. "It tastes better this way." He laughs, tearing a piece of bread with his teeth. "Everything does when you earn it." You look around the room, the rough laughter, the quick hands, the tired eyes still shining with some stubborn joy, and realize this is the real heart of the feast. The great hall upstairs might be the face of celebration, but here, in the warmth of the kitchen's shadow, beats the soul of it. "Do you ever join the nobles?" you ask. He shakes his head. "Not unless the plates need clearing." "But you make their food," you point out. "Aye," he says with a shrug. "And the fire that warms them too. But that's how it goes. They feast, we feed." His words could have been bitter. But they're not. They're calm, steady, spoken by someone who long ago made peace with the shape of the world. You sip your stew again, the heat sliding down your throat. The flavors are faint, but the warmth is perfect. It fills the spaces the wine could not. In the corner, a woman hums as she scrubs the last of the platters. The rhythm of her work is hypnotic. Her song older than words. You close your eyes and listen. The scrape of wood, the hiss of water, the sigh of coals, all of it forming a kind of music the nobles never hear. A small boy tiptoes past, carrying a tray of crumbs to the courtyard. You follow his movement through the half-open door, and there, in the snow, a cluster of shapes waits eagerly. The castle dogs, tails wagging, breath rising like smoke in the moonlight. The boy scatters the crumbs, laughing as they snap them up. Behind you, someone says quietly, "Nothing's wasted here, not even kindness." You turn back to your bowl. The last few spoonfuls now lukewarm. The girl who served you earlier meets your eyes. "Cold outside, isn't it?" she says. "Colder than I thought," you admit. She nods, smiling faintly. "That's winter for you. It takes and takes, but it gives, too, if you know where to look." You look around, the rough wooden table, the smell of stew, the laughter that rises despite the chill, and realize she's right. In this small, hidden corner of the castle, warmth isn't something given, it's something made. You finish your meal, stand slowly, and thank them. The man with the cheese raises his mug in salute. "Safe back to your lords," he says. You smile. "I think he'll stay by the fire a bit longer." Outside, the snow falls heavier now. But inside, you feel something deep and steady, the quiet warmth of shared bread, of simple lives stitched together by necessity and care. As you lean back, listening to the hum of voices and the steady crackle of the fire, you think, maybe the true feast was always happening down here. The servant's laughter fades behind you as you climb the narrow stairway once more. The air cools with every step, and by the time you reach the upper corridor, the faint warmth of the kitchens feels like a dream half remembered. The castle above sleeps restlessly, the kind of sleep that comes only after indulgence. You pass the great hall again. The tables are half cleared now, strewn with bones, wilted greens, and forgotten goblets still trembling faintly in the draught. The sugar swan is gone, its puddle hardened into amber glass. The fire burns low, shadows crawling up the walls like vines. You pause at the doorway, watching two servants rake the rushes, sweeping away crumbs. Bones, the evidence of joy. The sound is soothing. Brush, scrape, sweep, history tidying itself for the next telling. But then a memory rises, something you overheard earlier, in the hungry years. The snow doesn't fall white. It falls gray. You turn toward the high windows. The night outside is thick with storm. But beyond the glass, you catch a flicker of light. Torches, dozens of them, winding up the path to the gates. Curious, you slip to the side door and step out into the courtyard. The cold hits instantly, biting through your cloak, seizing your lungs. The snow crunches beneath your boots, each flake glimmering faintly in the torchlight. At the gate, the guards are speaking with a small group of travelers, wrapped in rough wool. Faces hollow with exhaustion. Refugees. One of them, a man with a frost-bitten beard, holds up a sack. "We bring grain," he says hoarsely, "in roots. Trade for shelter." The guard hesitates, glancing toward the towers. "We have enough mouths to feed," he mutters. The man lowers his head. "Then take the food. Just let the children stay by the fire." You feel something tighten in your chest. The world outside these walls has been buried in snow for weeks. maybe months. In a winter like this, every grain of barley, every scrap of warmth, is a kind of currency and mercy, a luxury. Before the guard can reply, the cook appears, wrapped in her heavy shawl. You recognize her instantly. The same woman who presided over the kitchen like a general over her army. Her eyes flash in the torchlight. "Let them in," she says. "The Lord's eaten enough for 10 men. The hearth still burns." The guard frowns. "The steward." She cuts him off. "The steward's asleep, and so should you be. Now open the gate before I feed you to the dogs." There's a pause. Then the gate creaks open. The travelers shuffle through, carrying their meager sacks and bundles. The children cling to their parents, eyes wide with disbelief. The cook ushers them toward the kitchens, barking orders over her shoulder. "Warm broth, dry rags, and fetch what's left of the trenchers. The dogs can spare a few bones for once." You follow quietly, not wanting to intrude but unable to look away. The warmth hits again as the doors swing open, flooding the room with light and steam. The newcomers crowd near the fire, rubbing their hands, whispering thanks between trembling lips. The cook moves like a storm, ladling stew, wrapping shawls, scolding anyone who hesitates. "Sit, eat. You can freeze later." A small boy clutches a bowl too big for his hands. The girl beside him, maybe his sister, dips her bread into it and feeds him carefully. One bite at a time. The steam curls around them like smoke, blurring the line between survival and grace. You stand near the wall, watching, listening. There's no laughter now, but something deeper, the quiet hum of people reclaiming life one spoonful at a time. The cook glances your way. "You can stop gawking and make yourself useful," she says gruffly. "Fetch that jug of ale before someone faints." You obey, passing cups, tearing bread, holding a child's hands near the fire to thaw them. The work feels good, grounding, real. For the first time all night, the feast's excess feels balanced. One of the travelers, an older woman with a lined face, looks up at you between spoonfuls. "The snow took the road, the ox, and half our village," she says quietly, "but not the will to walk." You nod, unsure how to reply. Her words hang in the air, heavy as the smoke curling from the hearth. The cook overhears and mutters, "The will to walk's the only thing the cold can't steal." The woman smiles faintly. "Aye, and sometimes a bowl of soup." You look down at her bowl, barley and cabbage again. The same humble fare the servants shared earlier. It feels different now, richer somehow. Maybe hunger makes gratitude its own seasoning. As the refugees eat, the cook finally sits, wiping her forehead. She looks at you and snorts. "You're learning," she says. "From the best," you reply. She smirks. "Flattery's free. Keep it that way." Outside, the wind howls across the ramparts, rattling the shutters. Inside, the fire burns bright, its light spilling over tired faces, glinting in eyes that still remember how to hope. You glance around, the bowls, the bread, the quiet determination, and it strikes you that this, too, is a feast, not of plenty, but of mercy. The cook lifts her mug of ale and raises it slightly toward you. "To warm hands and full bellies," she says. You raise yours in return. "And to those who still open doors." For a moment, the world outside doesn't exist, only this small circle of light. Defying the snow. The children start to laugh, their voices bright as bells against the storm. The cook smiles into her cup. The wind wails louder, but the fire answers with a steady roar. You think of the great hall above, of the lords and their sugar swans, and realize something quietly profound. The richest warmth isn't the kind served in gold cups, it's the kind shared from chipped bowls. By the time you climb back to the upper floors, the castle feels almost like a memory of itself, quiet, hollow, the echoes of laughter clinging to the stone. The torches along the corridor hiss faintly, their flames bent by drafts that smell of cold iron and old smoke. The storm outside has grown worse, the shutters tremble in their hinges. Dust trickling from the ceiling like sand from an hourglass. You pause by a narrow window and look out. Beyond the courtyard walls, the world has vanished beneath the white, just an ocean of snow under a sky the color of slate. You can almost hear it breathing, slow and endless. When you return to the hall, most of the nobles have gone, their absence leaving behind a scatter of abandoned goblets and half-melted candles. Only the musicians remain, plucking softly, half asleep, their fingers following muscle memory rather than music. But near the far hearth, a small circle of people still lingers, the lord, the steward, the physician monk, and a few guests who never learned when to stop drinking. Their conversation rises and falls like the last waves of a dying tide. You take a seat on the outer bench. Unseen but not unwelcome, the monk is speaking again, this time about the seasons of hunger. Even a feast like this, he says quietly, must remember the months when the cupboards are bare. The wise man stores his plenty not in gold, but in grain. The Lord chuckles, swirling his wine. Grain doesn't impress visitors. The monk smiles faintly. No, but it outlasts them. A ripple of laughter moves through the group. Soft but thoughtful. The steward nods. True enough. I've seen castles richer than this crumble after 2 winters. Coin can't fill a belly. You glance toward the long table, where a few remaining dishes have cooled into silence, half a pie, a crust of bread, a bowl of dried fruit. It's strange how quickly abundance becomes ghostly once the appetite fades. One of the younger knights sighs. I hate the hungry season. Everything tastes of wood smoke and patience. That's when you learn who you are. The monk replies. When the body must live on memory. You watch his face in the firelight, lined, calm, and faintly glowing with the conviction of someone who has seen too many winters and survived them all. The Lord pours more wine. And what do you eat in the lean months? Holy man? The monk folds his hands. Whatever the earth gives, whatever others waste, and gratitude, when it's offered. The words hang in the air, quiet but heavy. Even the fire seems to listen. After a long silence, the Lord says softly, "Then we'll send you barley when the snow melts." The monk inclines his head. "And I'll pray your harvest returns the favor." The exchange feels ancient, ritualistic, part generosity, part transaction, all wrapped in the fragile diplomacy of survival. A servant enters quietly, carrying a tray of dried figs and nuts. The scent of roasted chestnuts follows him, nutty and sweet, filling the hall with warmth again. He offers the tray around. The Lord takes one, cracks it open, and holds it near the fire. Strange, He murmurs, "The harder the shell, the sweeter the meat." Like most hearts, the monk says. You hide a smile behind your cup. The others talk for a while about next spring, about planting, about repairing the roads, about the rumor of new taxes from the king. The conversation drifts like smoke, and you let it wash over you. As you listen, you notice something tender in their weariness. The feast has stripped away rank and ceremony. Now they're just people, tired, full, a little drunk, wondering how long the winter will last. The minstrel changes songs again. This one is slower, gentler, almost a lullaby. His voice is soft, but it fills the hall like candlelight fills darkness. The frost will fade, the grain will grow. The hearth remembers every glow. The guests fall silent, even the Lord closes his eyes for a moment, as if the song itself were a prayer. You sip the last of your wine. It's cool now, the spice is faded, but the memory of warmth remains. You think of the travelers downstairs, sleeping near the kitchen fire, of the servants still scrubbing dishes, laughing softly to stay awake, of the snow piling higher against the walls. All of it, somehow, belongs together, the rich and the poor, the full and the hungry, the warm and the cold. Like ingredients in a stew, they only make sense when combined. The minstrel's song fades into silence. No one claps, no one speaks. The fire sighs and settles. Finally, the monk rises. It's late, he says. The feast is over. But remember, when the snow buries the fields, every crumb you saved becomes a blessing. The Lord nods slowly, and every kindness, too. The monk bows, his robes whispering like wind through dry leaves. You watch him disappear down the corridor, and something inside you feels lighter, as if his words have cleared the air. You stand, stretching, and move toward the hearth. The fire has burned low, but the coals glow steady and red, like a heartbeat that refuses to quit. You kneel beside it, hold your hands out, and whisper quietly to no one in particular. Tomorrow, we start again. The embers answer with a faint crackle. Warm and alive, the last of the nobles has gone to bed. The hall is finally still, except for the soft sigh of dying fire and the faint groan of timbers expanding in the cold. You stand in the near dark, feeling the quiet settle like fresh snow over everything that happened tonight. It smells of smoke, wax, and memory. Only the servants move now. Ghosts in woolen shawls, sweeping rushes, gathering cups, stacking trenchers into baskets. One hums the last tune the minstrel played, the melody drifting through the emptiness like a lullaby for the stones themselves. You wander to the far end of the room, where the windows overlook the courtyard. The snow glows faintly blue under the moonlight, and for a moment, you can almost see the reflection of the feast, laughter, movement, warmth, flickering in the glass as if the night refuses to forget it. Then something shifts, a shadow near the hearth. The cook is there again, wrapped in a cloak now, sitting on a low stool, staring into the embers. You move closer. Still awake? You ask softly. She doesn't look up. Someone has to see the fire through the night. It's the only thing in this castle that never sleeps. You sit beside her. The coals pulse like stars fall into earth. Tiny and stubborn. You fed half the kingdom tonight. You say. She huffs a laugh. Half the castle. Maybe. The rest will still wake hungry. That's how it goes. You nod, but you gave warmth to those travelers. You gave them more than food. Her expression softens. I gave them soup. The rest they found on their own. She pokes the coals with a poker. Sparks rising like fireflies. You can't feed a person's heart. You just make it warm enough that it remembers to beat. For a while, neither of you speak. The silence is different now, not heavy, but full, like the pause after a hymn. The storm outside has quieted. Only the occasional drip of melting snow breaks the rhythm of the fire's breathing. On the table behind you lies what remains of the feast: crumbs, half-eaten apples, a pitcher of ale gone flat, 1,000 small remnants of celebration, proof that joy once filled this space. The cook glances at them and smiles faintly. Tomorrow, we'll make broth from the bones, bread from the old dough, sweet cakes from the crumbs. You look at her, amused. Is nothing ever wasted? Not if you're clever, she says, leaning back. The secret of surviving winter is pretending it's a challenge, not a curse. You laugh quietly. That sounds like philosophy. She shrugs. That's just hunger talking fancy. A log collapses in the hearth. The sparks swirl upward, painting her face in flashes of gold and shadow. You think of how many winters she must have seen, how many feasts she's cooked, how many fires she's watched burn down to this same soft glow. You'll sleep soon? You ask. When the fire does, she says simply, someone must keep it company. You nod. You talk about the fire like it's alive. Her eyes flick toward the flames. It is alive, she says. It eats. It breathes. It dies if you forget to feed it. No different than us. Her words sink into you. Slow and heavy. You look at the embers again, glowing, pulsing, fading, and suddenly, the whole night makes sense. The bread, the wine, the laughter, the salt and spice, the sugar swans, the soup for strangers, all of it was feeding this same fire, the ancient need to keep the dark away. You whisper, almost to yourself, that's what all of this was for, wasn't it? The feast, the warmth, the songs. She smiles without looking at you. What else? You think we eat to fill our stomachs? No, we eat to remember that we're still here. The fire pops once more, and the last flame curls inward, leaving only red light. She reaches out, places a small log on the coals, and waits until it catches. There, she says, that'll keep till dawn. The hall glows faintly again, shadows dancing along the carved beams. You rise, pulling your cloak tighter. Good night. Then, you whisper. Good night, she says, her eyes on the flames. And remember, feed your fire. Whatever shape it takes. You walk back toward the corridor, your footsteps muffled by rushes. The walls seem to sigh as you pass, the stones cooling from the day's heat. At the doorway, you look back one last time. The cook sits alone by the hearth, her silhouette outlined in gold. The fire hums softly beside her, alive and loyal. And in that quiet, you understand something final and simple, the truth beneath every meal. Every story, every spark of warmth against the winter. People don't just eat to live. They live to keep the fire burning. Morning comes softly, not with sunlight, but with pale gray light diffused through frost. The castle wakes slowly, groaning at the joints like an old creature. You open your eyes to the muted hush of snow pressing against the walls. The muffled sound of someone stoking a distant hearth. The feast feels like something you dreamed. You rise, wrap your cloak tighter, and walk the same hall you wandered last night. The tables have been cleared. The rushes replaced. The air smelling faintly of soap and smoke. The fire has been rebuilt, smaller now. Domestic rather than grand, its flames curling lazily around new logs. A servant hums as she polishes the Lord's goblet. The notes drift up into the rafters. Delicate and simple, a melody that sounds almost like the wind outside. You move toward the window. The world beyond is endless white. Fields and forests buried under a soft, merciless beauty. The storm has stopped, leaving silence in its wake. A few figures move in the courtyard, bundled in furs, shoveling paths through the drifts. Smoke rises from chimneys, thin gray ribbons twisting into the sky. Somehow, the castle feels both smaller and stronger in this light. It's no longer a place of revelry, but of endurance, a heart still beating beneath layers of snow. Down in the kitchens, you hear the familiar clatter of pots, the chatter of early risers. The cook is already awake, of course. You find her by the fire, ladling something steaming from a pot. Pottage, she says before you can ask. Same as yesterday, same as tomorrow. Keeps the world turning. You smile. The feast feels far away now. She snorts. Feasts always do. They shine bright, then vanish like a candle in the wind. It's the small meals that keep us alive. She hands you a bowl. The steam rises, carrying the scent of onions, barley, and thyme. Simple, honest, perfect. You sit on the bench by the hearth, spooning it slowly. It's not the extravagant food of last night, no spice, no sugar, no poetry, but it tastes like comfort, like truth. A few of the travelers from last night are still here, huddled near the fire. The children are wrapped in blankets, their faces soft with sleep. One of them wakes and meets your eyes, smiling shyly. You smile back, and for a moment, it feels as though warmth itself has a face. The cook notices and says quietly, "They'll move on when the road's clear." "And you?" you ask. She shrugs. "I'll be here when the next storm comes. Someone has to keep the fire fed." Her words linger, warm and weighty. You finish your breakfast and stand, handing her the empty bowl. "Thank you," you say. "For what?" "For reminding me what warmth really means." She studies you for a moment, then nods. "That's what winter's for, teaching fools to value fire." You laugh softly, bow, and step outside. The cold wraps around you like silk spun from ice. The courtyard is dazzling, snow piled high, sunlight scattering across it in shards of glass. The air tastes clean, sharp, alive. You can still smell smoke on your clothes, salt on your skin, sweetness on your tongue. The guards nod to you as you pass, their armor rimmed with frost. One of them grins, "Back to the world, then?" "For now," you say. The gates creak open, revealing the white expanse beyond. The road disappears into brightness. You hesitate, glancing back once more. From the gate, you can see the castle rising out of the snow like something half-remembered, towers wrapped in mist. Banners hanging still. It looks both eternal and fragile, like the memory of a flame. You think of everything it held last night: laughter, Hunger, generosity, fear, the sound of cups clinking, the whisper of sugar melting, the taste of ale, salt, and spice, the quiet of the kitchen, the warmth shared among strangers. And suddenly, it all feels connected, every meal, every story, every fire lit against the dark. You take a deep breath. The cold burns your lungs. But it feels good, real. You start walking, your boots sinking into the snow. Each step is a heartbeat. Steady, certain. Behind you, the castle's smoke rises like a signal to the sky, a reminder that somewhere, warmth still exists. And you realize that's what the feast was really about. Not gluttony, not grandeur, but defiance. A promise whispered by every generation to the next. We will eat, and we will laugh, and we will make light in the long dark. You stop once more, turn your face toward the wind, and whisper softly. Keep the fire alive. The breeze carries it away. Toward the castle, toward the kitchens, toward every heart still beating beneath the snow. Then you walk on, leaving footprints that glow briefly in the morning light before the wind smooths them away. The world is quiet, the cold is vast. But somewhere behind you, a hearth is still burning. And that is enough. End of script. Sweet dreams.